Hey everybody. Um, so I did my list of favorite comedy movies a while ago, and not a lot of people really gave a crap. If you did, that's cool, but from my point of view, I feel like it was kind of pointless to do. Well, everything's pointless to do nowadays, but honestly, I think it's time I do something a little different for comedy movies. When I'm talking about my list of favorite comedy movies, I was referring to all time. How about I refer to the ones from this century? Since most people like to assume that comedies nowadays just aren't as funny as they used to be, I like to point out that that doesn't mean that every comedy movie sucks during this century time. So, with that being said, I think it's time I share my thoughts on 10 movies from this century I personally think really are funny. Now, again, this is going to be ranked by which films I consider the funniest, which ones I laugh at the most. They're not really ranked by overall best. And remember, it's my opinion. A lot of comedies I may have not have seen that you've seen on here, so I apologize. But regardless of that, we're just gonna focus on what I think are the funniest movies of the 21st century. And there was a rule I had for my list of favorite comedies there that I didn't mention, but I'm gonna mention right now. I'm excluding animated comedies since there's a lot of those I don't want to mention right now. I'm excluding sketch comedies. If you don't know what that is, you can look it up. And this is all again ranked by what I think are the funniest, the films I love most for comedy. That being said, let's get this list started.
Zoolander. Now, a lot of people have a huge love for Zoolander, wanting to put it somewhere higher on the list. Do they want that? Well, I think Zoolander, while being a very funny movie, isn't the funniest to be somewhere in the top 5. There's just some reason for that. I guess some moments just don't work for me. Overall, though, Zoolander's a pretty funny movie. Why? Well, it's because of the characters, like most movies on this list. Ben Stiller's, of course, the main character. He plays a male model who likes to brag about that, but since loses an award by a guy played by Owen Wilson, he just spends the rest of his life learning about villain plans of Will Ferrell as a villain. Yeah, you don't want more than that. Will Ferrell as a villain. Yeah, there are a lot of great celebrities in this movie that put out funny roles. It was at a time when comedy movies mostly were focusing on who stars in it rather than what happens in it. And the people who star in this movie are definitely funny people. Of course, there's Ben Stiller, but there's, like I said, Will Ferrell as the villain of this movie. There's Owen Wilson as a side character, and a bunch of other random cameos and appearances. With all honesty, I think if you haven't seen Zoolander, you probably wouldn't like it. You really enjoy what the film offers when it comes to all the humor and stuff. If you're not a fan of comedy that this decade offered, then I don't want you to talk about this movie. I just want to enjoy it myself. I love it. Dodgeball. This is another film that focuses on characters. Dodgeball is, of course, everyone's favorite high school sport that we all want to pretend we're good at, but we really suck at. And then there's, of course, the movie. This movie is just like a competition dodgeball. It's a basic story about two people competing against their gyms who then decide to compete by a dodgeball champion. While that may sound as generic and unfunny, it's not. Why? Well, again, the characters. Vince Vaughn's the main character. Fun fact, Vince Vaughn started out in the 90s for more serious roles. We didn't mostly see him in comedies. We mostly just saw him for serious approaches. But his approach in serious roles was horrible received, so he just went into being in comedy movies. And so we got Dodgeball he appeared in. Now, it's not the Vince Vaughn character that's worth the watch. It's the Ben Stiller character that's worth the watch. We just talked about Zoolander, which stars Ben Stiller. While Dodgeball, Ben Stiller plays the antagonist, and by God, I have to admit, he plays probably one of the funniest antagonists in any movie ever. Like, I'm not even over-exaggerating. This dude was hilarious. He's the villain of the movie who has his own gym. He over-exaggerates about it a lot, and seems to always act in a sarcastic tone, always bitching to the characters about their gym and always just saying a lot. He's just so much fun to watch. I don't root for him. I just love watching him. He's funny. Everyone else in this movie can be funny, and there are some funny moments. But again, this is a time when we're mostly focused on characters, and honestly, I think the characters that appear here are fun characters to focus on. Superbad. This is another movie most people pay more attention to than what else I have on this list. Why Superbad here and not somewhere down below? Well, I feel like most of Superbad is mostly just for most of the comedy we're supposed to get out of it is from the bad language. Like, is bad language really that funny? I know I'm only 15. I know this probably is made for much older audiences, but even at the older age, I don't know if swearing makes for a funny movie. If it does, I might be wrong, and I probably should get a lot of hate, but in my opinion, I think swearing nonstop doesn't make for a funny movie, it just makes for a dirty movie. But there are lots of other funny moments this movie offers as well. The movie mostly focuses on these two who are 18 years old, who are seniors, who go to a party to want to get something done for an adulthood. Like the one guy, Jonah Hill, wants to go to get wasted, like drink beer when he's only 18. While the other one, Michael Cera, wants to go so he can get laid. It's a funny idea, and it definitely leads to more characters. While these two do make for funny roles and kind of have that more over-the-top kind of role, I think what really sums it up for me are the two cops that appear in this movie. Two cops played by Seth Rogen and Bill Hader appear in this, who both catch a guy who disguises himself as a 21-year-old named McLovin. Yeah, do not try that. And the cops believe it so much that they actually take the kid out with them to go do lots of dirty stuff. Like they literally take him out to go drink beer, smoke, do a lot of crimes, and even shoot a gun. It really, not only are they a disgrace to real life society, but they definitely steal the show. This entire movie makes for funny characters, and is of course a very dirty film. So I like to call it maybe like the South Park of live action comedies of the time. It's not really for any younger audience out there. If you're like in your sophomore or junior, senior years, you'll watch this, but if you're still in middle school, you probably aren't going to be wanting to watch this. You get a lot of trouble. Talladega Nights. If you saw the poster for Superbad, you see that the person who made this movie also made Talladega Nights. In my personal opinion, this is a funnier movie, just for a more simple reason. Why? Well, let's talk about it. There's of course Will Ferrell, the hilarious man himself, who plays a race car driver who always loves to race, always likes to win, but seems to lose his form as he has to go up against some Hispanic racer, as well as deal with a partner of his played by John C. Reilly. I forgot how they relate to each other, but either way, this is a funny movie because of the performance Will Ferrell gives. If you don't like Will Ferrell, I don't even know if you like comedy. Will Ferrell is one of the best definitions of comedy out there. He just steals the show perfectly, and most likely is right for this role. He always just has the funniest quotes, always does the funniest things, always just can't get enough of. Like, seriously, he works. All the other characters work in this movie too. It's a nice classic way to describe NASCAR. I think Will Ferrell's mostly known to take advantage of the slightest things and sellouts and make them very funny and very unserious. So that's what he does here. He makes racing, NASCAR, very hilarious when it shouldn't be. I also really love how his theme of NASCAR is a bread product. I know not a lot of people talk about that kind of comedy, but I just think it's hilarious. It's definitely a fun movie to watch. If you love Will Ferrell's sense of humor, I think you'll definitely love this and want to check it out sometime soon. Deadpool. Now here's another movie I think we all shouldn't be watching at a younger age. I kind of made a mistake watching this. I was kind of a bad kid. Believe it or not, when I was 13 years old, I was channel surfing and I saw that this was playing on FX, so I decided to turn it on and watch it without anybody's permission. I was a bad kid. And I guess the FX version does have censored moments, but I still watched it and I can still admire it. And they still kept a lot of the great comedy in it, so that counts, right? The main focus with Deadpool is that Deadpool breaks the fourth wall. Fourth wall breaking in a comedy is definitely nothing new. We've always seen that before. It's always been done. But Deadpool makes it work because he's a freaking superhero. He's part of the X-Men group. This movie mostly focuses on him fighting crime while also just talking to the audience, making funny jokes, making fun of stuff. It's the fun kind of superhero movie that you normally wouldn't see in the X-Men group. Mostly X-Men takes their movies seriously. If you've seen stuff like Logan or the original X-Men movies, a lot of those just are meant to be taken seriously and barely have any comedy in it. Deadpool, on the other hand, is funny as hell. Like, honestly, everything about this movie makes you want to sit down. It's one of those movies that you want to watch when you're younger, but can't because you have very sensitive parents. But you still find a way to watch it anyway, and that's kind of what I did. I don't want people to get upset at me for why. I don't want people to say, "Oh, you shouldn't watch that. It's way too inappropriate." How about you mind your own business? I like what I like. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. This is a comedy. This is one of those comedies from the century that we all expected to be as bland as everything else. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle is, of course, a sequel to the 1995 Jumanji. And I will admit, that one wasn't as funny. It was a good movie, definitely. But it wasn't really made as a comedy. It was mostly made more to focus on real events. Like, it gave Robin Williams a role. And when we heard this was coming out without Robin Williams, who, by the way, passed away 3 years ago, we all just thought this was going to suck. We thought it was going to be as bland and stupid as possible. But it turned out to be a very hilarious, fun adventure. Mainly because of these 4 roles. The fun about this movie is it focuses on... it's a story about 4 high schoolers who play a old video game called Jumanji, and it causes them to get transported into the game, turning into different characters. Like, one turns into Dwayne Johnson, a character. One turns into Kevin Hart character. One turns into Cara Jillian character. But by far the best would be Jack Black's character. Why? Because literally a female chooses that role and turns into Jack Black. Just seeing Jack Black act like the basic teenage girl is so incredibly funny. Like, if you don't think it's funny, I don't know what to say. I love it. Everything about this movie does make you regret saying it would suck. I mean, I do still miss Robin Williams. I do still miss Robin Williams, and I do wish he could appear in this. But it's okay. We got what we got, and what we got was pretty nice. I don't know what to say about the sequel. I thought the sequel was okay. It kind of took a little too less. It kind of stole most of the jokes, while still, I guess, working. Both work. All 3 work. It's just, if I had to choose the funniest one, I'd choose this. Elf. I've talked about Elf before when you watch my list of favorite comedy movies. Now, by the way, that list has improved on. I've seen more funny movies, so you might see an updated version sometime in the future. If you don't, I'm sorry, but Elf's no longer on that list. It's an honorable mention. Either way, I think I have a lot to talk about with Elf. Elf is the kind of movie that you have to watch during the holidays. I know I probably shouldn't say much about this movie. It was kind of already mentioned in all my other videos. But I can still find something good to watch from it. If you want to know why I was acting different, it's because something came up. I really need to start thinking about filming these when I'm alone. Anyway, number 3, Napoleon Dynamite. Now, here's a movie that is honestly something everyone needs to watch. It's like most of the movies on this list. When Napoleon Dynamite was first announced, a lot of us were expecting it to be a horrible comedy, just because of the idea not working. But for a big surprise, we turned on the movie, we watched it, and it was honestly funny as hell. Like, think about it. The idea of a teenager getting through high school and helping his friend be voted as class president may sound unfunny and bland, but it's not. It's freaking hilarious. Why? Well, there's of course the characters and their funny roles. A lot of stuff, great comedy in this, comes from the quotes of the movie. A lot of the quotes are there. There's of course Napoleon Dynamite, who has that very funny kind of role. He always talks to everyone like this. He's hilarious because we might have seen that kind of talk before in other movies, but Napoleon Dynamite does it the best. There's other characters too. There's his brother Kip, who puts out a good performance. He has that bad acting that we all love. There's also Pedro, the friend Napoleon Dynamite helps get for class president. Honestly, if you're a fan of this movie, you have to own a Vote for Pedro shirt. Those shirts have been selling everywhere. A lot of stuff has been selling from this. It's a fun movie, funny characters, funny premise. I think we all deserve to give this a chance. Austin Powers and Goldmember. I may be cheating. I know I've talked about Austin Powers a lot before, but I was mostly just referring to the sequel, The Spy Who Shagged Me. I haven't really talked much about International Man of Mystery or Goldmember. Let's talk about Goldmember. The third and final in the Austin Powers saga. This isn't the funniest, of course, but I guess I will admit it is, in real terms, the best. Just because it concludes a trilogy that, honestly, by the way, isn't really meant to be taken seriously. I don't know what I'm saying, but the other 2 Austin Powers movies were from the 90s. This is the only one from the 2000s. It definitely continues the story in a good way. The title, of course, is a spoof on the James Bond film Goldmember, not Goldfinger. That was the James Bond movie. This movie just to talk to Austin helping out with his dad, who's actually played by Michael Caine, while stopping Dr. Evil from getting a new villain on his side, Goldmember, who, by the way, is actually played by Mike Myers as well. Yeah, Mike Myers had 2 roles in the first Austin Powers movie, 3 roles in the second, and now he has 4 roles in the third. Seriously, the amount of characters Mike Myers portrays in this is insane. We've seen this idea before, but just from someone like Mike Myers, this is pretty great. It does add more humor. Most people complain that some of the humor was stolen, but in my opinion, it may feel stolen. It still works. It still finds ways to still be funny, because the humor in the other Austin Powers movies couldn't possibly be. We always wanted them to be running along with the franchise. So that's just what makes Goldmember so much fun. It concludes the trilogy. Most people have been thinking what Austin Powers 4 would be like, but in my opinion, I think we've already gotten enough from these 3. Let's just leave the franchise alone. Now let's get to number 1, a movie we all talked about before. Anchorman. Everyone's been saying Anchorman's the funniest movie of the century. It's not a surprise. Yeah, I shouldn't really talk about it. I've already talked about this movie enough when I was talking about my favorite comedy movies of all time, but I guess I can bring up the fact that Anchorman definitely has aged well. I've watched Anchorman a bunch more times after that list I made, and I found more to it, because I think I can now consider Anchorman a lot better than what I had on the list. Again, I don't know when I will do an improving list of favorite comedy movies. If I do, then this will definitely be somewhere in the top 7 rather than the top 9. I just can't see anything. I love what Anchorman does. It takes some of the funniest people, gives them funny roles, and definitely makes for a very interesting story. This is actually the kind of movie I wish we see more of nowadays. Sadly, comedy hasn't changed, so we don't really see these kind of movies. I just feel like Anchorman was one of the last movies to have that kind of humor and make us laugh all the way. It's just so much fun seeing this movie get so much done. It really does feel like a true comedy movie should. And I'm glad it was funny. I would have expected it to not work for anything because of the year it came out. But it came out in a good way. If you're a fan of Will Ferrell, you have to watch this. Don't tell me your excuses. This movie is Will Ferrell at its funniest.
With that being said, I think we're all done here. Thanks for watching. I don't know what I'm going to be doing in my next video, but just be prepared, because you never know. It could be anything. Absolutely anything.